My name is Daniel Petrescu. I am 58 years old, though most days I feel older than time itself. People say grief comes in waves. They are wrong. Waves rise and fall. Grief settles. It becomes the air you breathe, the weight in your bones, the silence that fills every room even when the world is loud outside. 13 years ago, I was not this man. I was a husband. A father of 2 boys. A man who believed life, no matter how hard, had a direction. My wife, Elena, was 45 when she died. But before I tell you about her, I have to go further back. Because loss didn't begin with her. It began with water. My oldest son, Andrei, was 16. He had this reckless kind of joy, the kind that makes you both proud and terrified as a parent. He laughed loudly, ran fast, argued like he knew everything, and loved like only someone who hasn't yet been hurt can love. It was summer. I remember the smell of hot asphalt and river grass. We had gone near the river outside the city. It wasn't even planned. Just a normal day. Just a father trying to be present. Andrei and his friends went down toward the water. I stayed back for a while. I can still hear his voice. "Dad, relax. I know how to swim." I didn't follow immediately. That decision has replayed in my head every single day for 13 years. When I reached the riverbank, there was shouting. Not playful shouting. Not laughter. Real fear. The current was stronger than it looked. That river, it doesn't forgive. They said he slipped. That he tried to push away from a rock. That something pulled him under. I didn't see it happen. I saw only the aftermath. Ripples. Empty water. And the worst sound a father can hear, the absence of his child. They found him hours later. 16 years old. And just like that, something inside me broke in a way that never healed. Elena held us together after that. I don't know how she did it. I truly don't. She carried grief like a quiet storm, never loud, never collapsing, but always there. She took care of our younger son, Mihai. She took care of me, even when I didn't deserve it. Because I disappeared after Andrei died. Not physically. I still went to work. I still sat at the table. But inside, I was gone. Elena would sometimes look at me in the evenings and say, softly, "You're still here, Daniel. Don't leave us too." I wish I had listened better. 3 years after Andrei, cancer entered our lives. At first, it was just fatigue. Then tests. Then more tests. Then a word that doesn't need explanation. Cancer. Stage 3. Elena never cried in front of me. Not once. She smiled. Even during chemotherapy. Even when her hair began to fall in strands that she would quietly gather so Mihai wouldn't see. One night, I found her sitting on the bathroom floor holding a handful of her hair. She looked at me and said, almost apologetically, "I just wanted to remember what it felt like." That broke me more than Andrei's death. Because this time, I was watching it happen slowly. I was watching life leave someone I loved, piece by piece, and there was nothing I could do. She fought for 2 years. 2 long, painful, dignified years. And then, one morning, she didn't wake up. She was 45. And I was left with a house full of memories and a boy who was now afraid of losing everything. Mihai was 12 when his mother died. He stopped being a child that day. He didn't cry loudly. He didn't scream. He just became quiet. Too quiet. We lived like ghosts after that. 2 people moving through the same space, carrying different versions of the same pain. I tried to be stronger for him. I really did. But I didn't know how to be both father and mother, and a man who was still drowning in grief. Years passed. He grew taller, more distant. But he stayed. And that mattered. Because he was all I had left. 5 years ago, I lost him too. Mihai was 20. He had just started building his own life. Small steps. Small dreams. He wasn't reckless like Andrei. He was careful. Thoughtful. That's what makes it harder to accept. Because when life takes the careful ones, you stop believing in fairness entirely. It was a car accident. Rain. Night. A road he had driven 100 times. They said he didn't suffer. People always say that, as if it helps. It doesn't. Nothing helps. I remember standing in the hospital hallway, hearing the words, and feeling nothing. No tears. No scream. Just emptiness. A silence so deep it felt like the world had ended, but no one else noticed. That was the moment I truly became alone. No wife. No sons. No family. Just a name, and a body that kept waking up every morning for reasons I could not understand. I stopped answering calls. Stopped opening curtains. Stopped caring whether I lived or died. Because honestly, I didn't see the difference anymore. Days blurred into each other. Food had no taste. Time had no meaning. I existed. That's all. And then, something happened that I still struggle to explain. It was late autumn. Cold. Gray. One of those days where the sky feels heavy. I was walking without direction. Just moving because staying still hurt too much. Near a small roadside ditch, I heard a sound. At first, I ignored it. Then I heard it again. A weak, trembling whimper. I almost kept walking. That's the truth. But something, maybe instinct, maybe something deeper, made me stop. I looked down. There, half hidden in mud and wet leaves, was a tiny dog. A puppy. Shaking. Injured. Barely breathing. One of its legs was twisted. Its fur was soaked. It looked at me, not with fear, but with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Trust. I stood there for a moment, frozen. And then a thought hit me so sharply it felt like pain. If I walk away, it dies. Simple. Clear. Final. For the first time in years, something depended on me again. Not memory. Not grief. Not loss. Life. I knelt down. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from something I didn't recognize anymore. Care. I picked him up. He was so light. Too light. I wrapped him in my coat and whispered, without even realizing. It's okay. I've got you. At the vet, they told me he might not survive the night. Too weak. Too injured. I sat there anyway. Hours passed. For the first time in years, I didn't think about death. I thought about whether this small, fragile life would continue. And when he opened his eyes, just slightly, and looked at me again, something inside my chest moved. Not fully. Not completely. But enough. He survived. I named him Luca. I don't know why. The name just came. The first weeks were hard. He needed constant care. Feeding. Medication. Warmth. Presence. And I gave it. Not because I was strong, but because he needed me. And slowly, without noise, without dramatic change, the darkness inside me began to crack. Just a little. Luca followed me everywhere. At first, slowly, limping. Then stronger. Then with joy. Real joy. The kind I had forgotten existed. He would wait by the door when I left. wag his tail like I was the most important person in the world when I returned. No expectations. No past. No questions. Just presence. And something incredible happened. I started talking again. At first, just to him. Simple things. Let's go. Eat. Good boy. Then more. I found myself telling him about Andrei. About Elena. About Mihai. And instead of silence answering me, there was a heartbeat. A living being listening. One evening, sitting on the floor with Luca resting his head on my leg, I realized something. I was still broken. That hadn't changed. The losses were still there. The pain was still there. But for the first time in years, I was also alive. Not just existing. Alive. Because even after everything, there was still something I could give. Care. Warmth. Protection. Love. I used to think my life ended the day I lost my last son. But now, I see it differently. That was the day everything was taken from me. And the day I had a choice. To disappear. Or to remain. Not for the past. But for whatever small piece of life still found its way to me. Luca didn't replace my family. Nothing ever will. But he reminded me of something I had forgotten. Even a shattered soul can still hold light. Even after everything. And sometimes, all it takes is one fragile life. Looking at you. And trusting you not to walk away. I didn't become a different man overnight. There was no sudden miracle, no moment where everything made sense again. That's not how healing works. Not after this kind of loss. But there were small changes. So small that, at first, I almost didn't notice them. I started opening the curtains in the morning. Not because I wanted to see the world, but because Luca would sit there, waiting, looking at the light like it mattered. So I opened them for him. Then I started going outside more. Short walks at first. Just around the block. People would pass by. Some would smile at the dog. A few would try to talk. I didn't respond much. Not yet. But I didn't avoid them either. That was new. Winter came. Cold, sharp, unforgiving. But Luca didn't care. He would run in the snow like it was the greatest thing he had ever seen. I remember standing there one morning, watching him jump into the snow, roll, get up, and run again, as if the world had never hurt him. And I thought, how is that possible? How can something so small, so fragile, still trust life so completely? I envied him. But at the same time, I started learning from him. There was a bench in a small park not far from my house. I had passed it many times, but never stopped. One afternoon, I sat down. Luca curled next to me, resting his head on my shoe. The park was quiet. A few people, distant voices, wind moving through the trees. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel everything. Not just the loss. Everything. I thought about Andrei, the way he laughed, the way he would argue with me over nothing, just to win. I thought about Elena, her strength, her quiet courage, the way she held us together when I couldn't. I thought about Mihai, the silence he carried, the strength he never showed but always had. And then something happened that I had been avoiding for years. I cried. Not the kind of crying that breaks you. But the kind that releases something that has been trapped too long. It didn't erase the pain. But it made space for something else. After that day, I began to visit that bench often. It became a place between past and present. A place where I could remember, without drowning. One morning, as I sat there, an older man approached me. He pointed at Luca and smiled. "Good dog," he said. I nodded. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he asked, "Rescue?" I hesitated. Then I said, "Yes." He nodded again, as if he understood more than I had said. After a few seconds, he added, "They don't just get saved, you know." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He smiled slightly. "They save you back." Then he stood up and walked away. That sentence stayed with me. They save you back. At first, I resisted it, because it felt too simple for something so complicated. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was true. Luca didn't take away my pain. He didn't erase my past. But he gave me something I had lost completely. A reason to stay. Spring came. Slowly. Like everything else. The snow melted. The air softened. And one day, while walking through the same park, something unexpected happened. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, ran toward Luca. Her mother called after her, apologizing. "I'm sorry, she loves dogs." "It's okay," I said. My voice sounded different. Not empty. Not distant. Just normal. The girl knelt down and hugged Luca without fear. He wagged his tail, gentle, calm. "What's his name?" she asked. "Luca," I replied. She smiled. "He's happy." I didn't answer immediately. Then I said, quietly, "Yes, he is." She looked at me, studying my face with that honest curiosity only children have. "And you?" The question caught me off guard. I almost said no. Almost. But something stopped me. I looked down at Luca, then back at her. "I'm getting there." That was the first time I admitted it. Not to others. To myself. Life didn't become easy. I still have nights where I wake up and expect to hear voices that are no longer there. I still pass places that hurt. Still remember dates I wish I could forget. Still carry guilt that has no answer. That doesn't disappear. It becomes part of you. But now, there are also moments. Small ones. Quiet ones. Real ones. A walk in the morning. The sound of paws on the floor. The way Luca looks at me when I say his name. The way the light enters the room when I open the curtains. And sometimes, when everything is quiet, I sit with my thoughts and realize something that once felt impossible. I didn't lose everything. I lost the people I loved the most. Yes. But I didn't lose the part of me that could love. That part was still there. Buried. Broken. But alive. I used to believe that surviving meant moving on. Forgetting. Letting go. But now I understand. That's not true. I carry them with me. Every day. In everything I do. In the way I speak. In the way I care. In the way I stayed, when it would have been easier to disappear. And sometimes, late at night. When Luca is asleep beside me. I speak out loud. Not because I expect an answer. But because it feels right. "I'm still here," I say. I didn't leave. And in that silence, I no longer feel completely alone. Because somehow, through loss, through pain, through something as small and unexpected as a wounded dog on the side of the road, I found something I thought was gone forever. Not happiness. Not yet. But something just as important. A reason. To wake up. To breathe. To stay. And maybe. For now. That is enough. There are days when the past returns without warning. No sound. No trigger. No reason. Just a memory, sharp, precise, alive. A smell. Wet earth after rain. And suddenly I am back there, by the river. I hear Andrei's voice again, echoing across the water. I see him turn, half smiling, half impatient, like I'm the one slowing him down. Dad, relax. I close my eyes. But memory doesn't disappear when you close your eyes. It becomes clearer. There are nights when I sit in the kitchen long after midnight, staring at nothing. The house is quiet, but not peaceful. There's a difference. Peace is calm. Silence can be heavy. Sometimes I imagine Elena walking in, tying her hair back, asking if I've eaten. Sometimes I almost answer. That's when it hurts the most, not when I remember they are gone. But when, for a second, I forget. I used to fight these moments. Try to push them away. Distract myself. Drown them. But I learned something, slowly, painfully. The more you resist grief, the stronger it holds you. So now, I don't run. When the memories come, I let them sit with me. Not as enemies, but as reminders. Proof that what I had was real. One evening, I took out an old box I hadn't opened in years. It was hidden in the back of a closet. Dust had settled over it, like time itself was trying to bury it. Luca sat beside me as I opened it. Inside were pieces of a life that no longer existed. Photographs. Letters. A small wooden car Andrei carved when he was a child. A scarf that still carried Elena's perfume, faint but undeniable. Mihai's notebook, filled with quiet handwriting, sketches in the margins. I touched each item slowly, carefully, as if they could break. Maybe they already had. Or maybe I had. There was a photograph at the bottom. All four of us. Taken years before everything fell apart. We were standing close, arms around each other. Smiling. Not the kind of smile people force for pictures. A real one. Alive. I stared at that image for a long time. Trying to understand something that had no answer. How does a moment like this disappear? Luca rested his head on my arm. Warm. Present. Alive. I looked at him, then back at the photo. And something shifted inside me. Not relief. Not closure. But understanding. That moment didn't disappear. It ended. There's a difference. I carefully placed everything back in the box. But this time, I didn't hide it. I left it on a shelf. Not as a wound, but as a part of me. Days passed. Then weeks. And something new began to happen. People started recognizing me in the park. Not by my name, but by Luca, the man with the dog. At first, I kept conversations short. A nod. A simple answer. But slowly, words became easier. A sentence. Then two. Then, sometimes, a short conversation. Nothing deep. Nothing heavy. Just human. There was a woman who came regularly with her older dog. She once said to me, "You weren't always like this, were you?" I looked at her. "What do you mean?" She smiled gently. "You look like someone who's been through something, but decided to stay anyway." I didn't answer immediately, because I didn't know how to explain it. So I just said, "I'm still deciding." She nodded. "As long as you're still here, that's enough." That sentence stayed with me. Just like the one before. They save you back. As long as you're still here, that's enough. One afternoon, rain started unexpectedly while I was in the park. People rushed to leave. But I stayed. Luca sat close to me, his fur slowly getting wet. The sky was heavy, the kind of gray that presses down on everything. And standing there, in the rain, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not sadness. Not emptiness. But clarity. I realized that my life would never return to what it was. There would be no version of the future where Elena walks through the door again. Where Andrei laughs too loudly. Where Mihai sits quietly at the table. That life is gone. Completely. And accepting that is not betrayal. It's truth. But I also realized something else. Something I had been too broken to see before. Life didn't end with them. It changed. Violently. Unfairly. Irreversibly. But it didn't end. Because I'm still here. And if I'm still here, then something is still possible. Not the same life. Not the same happiness. But something. Even if it's small. Even if it's quiet. Even if it's just walking a dog in the morning. That night, for the first time in years, I did something simple. I cooked a real meal. Not out of necessity. Not because I had to. But because I wanted to. Luca sat nearby, watching every movement. I smiled. A small, almost unfamiliar gesture. But real. After dinner, I sat by the window. The city lights reflected faintly on the glass. Luca curled beside me, breathing slowly. And I thought about everything that had happened. Everything that had been taken. Everything that remained. And for the first time, I didn't ask why. I asked something else. What now? It's a quiet question. But it changes everything. Because why looks backward. What now looks forward. I don't have big answers. No grand purpose. No dramatic transformation. Just this. Tomorrow, I will wake up. I will open the curtains. I will step outside. Luca will run ahead like he always does. And I will follow. Not because life is perfect. Not because the pain is gone. But because I am still here. And somehow, that still matters. What now stayed with me longer than I expected. It didn't demand anything from me. It didn't force me to become someone new overnight. It simply waited. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was being dragged through my own life. I felt like I was choosing it. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. That hadn't happened in a long time. Usually, I would wake up heavy, tired, already wishing the day would pass. But that morning, there was something different. Not excitement. Not happiness. But a quiet kind of readiness. I turned my head. Luca was already awake, watching me. His tail moved slightly when he saw my eyes open. As if he had been waiting. All right, I said softly. Let's go. We walked earlier than usual. The streets were still half asleep. The air was cold, clean, untouched. There's something about early mornings, they don't carry yesterday's weight yet. They feel neutral. Like a blank page. At the park, everything looked different. Not because it had changed. But because I had. The same bench. The same trees. The same paths. But I was seeing them, not as someone passing time. But as someone present. Luca ran ahead, then came back, then ran again. That rhythm, go, return, became something I started to understand. Maybe that's what life is, too. We go forward, then we come back to what matters. Again and again. That morning, I didn't sit on the bench immediately. I kept walking. One circle. Then another. Then I realized something simple. I wasn't walking just for Luca anymore. I was walking because I wanted to. Days began to form a new pattern. Wake up. Open the curtains. Step outside. Walk. Come back. eat, sit, think. But now, between those actions, there were moments. Small ones, but real. I started noticing things I had ignored for years. The way light changes throughout the day. The sound of leaves when the wind moves through them. The difference between silence and calm. The way Luca tilts his head when he doesn't understand something. One afternoon, while sitting on the bench, I saw a young man arguing on the phone. His voice was loud, tense, full of frustration. I couldn't hear the full conversation, but I recognized the tone. Pressure. Anger. Life feeling too heavy. He ended the call abruptly and stood there, breathing hard. For a moment, I hesitated. I don't usually interfere, but something inside me pushed me forward. "Hey," I said. He looked at me, surprised. "Take a breath," I added quietly. He stared at me like I was strange. Maybe I was. But after a second, he did. One breath. Then another. His shoulders dropped slightly. "It's not as urgent as it feels," I said. He didn't reply immediately. Then he nodded, just once. "Yeah, maybe." He walked away. And I sat back down. It wasn't a big moment, but it mattered. Because for the first time in a long time, I had stepped outside of my own pain and seen someone else's. That evening, I thought about it for a long time. Not about what I said, but about what it meant. For years, my world had been closed. Narrow. Focused only on what I had lost. But now, there was space again. Small, but growing. I began talking to people more. Nothing deep. Just small exchanges. A greeting. A short conversation about dogs, weather, routine. But every interaction reminded me of something important. I was still part of the world. Even if I felt disconnected for so long. One day, I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I visited the river. I didn't plan it. My feet just took me there. The same place. The same current. The same sound of water moving without pause. For a moment, I stood at a distance. My body tense. My breath shallow. Luca stayed close to me, unusually quiet. As if he understood. I walked closer. Slowly. Each step felt heavy. Not physically. Emotionally. The closer I got, the louder the past became. I reached the edge. And there it was. The water. Moving the same way it always had. Unaffected. Unchanged. For years, I avoided this place. Because I believed it held something of my son. Something I couldn't face. But standing there now, I realized something difficult. The river didn't take him. It didn't choose him. It didn't know him. It simply exists. The pain I carried wasn't in the river. It was in me. And avoiding the place didn't protect me from it. I knelt down. Touched the water. Cold. Real. Present. I remember, I said quietly. Not to the river. Not to the past. But to him. To Andrei. I remember everything. I didn't cry. Not this time. But something inside me settled. A tension that had been there for years loosened. When I stood up, Luca pressed against my leg. I looked down at him. And for the first time, I smiled without effort. We stayed there for a while. Not long. Just enough. When I turned to leave, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was walking forward. That night, sitting at home, I realized something I hadn't fully understood before. Healing doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means it stops controlling every step you take. I still miss them. Every day. That hasn't changed. It never will. But now? There are also things I don't miss. The constant wait. The inability to breathe. The feeling that life is over. Because it's not. It's different. But it's not over. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I sit with Luca beside me, and I think about something simple. If I had walked past that ditch, if I had ignored that small, broken life, if I had chosen, one more time, to turn away, I might not be here now. Not really. But I didn't. I stopped. I stayed. I chose. And that choice, small as it was, changed everything. So now, when I ask myself, what now? The answer is no longer empty. Now, I live, not perfectly, not without pain, but honestly. And tomorrow, I will wake up again, open the curtains, step outside, and follow the only path I know now. Forward. Forward doesn't mean fast. That's something I had to learn the hard way. For years, I thought that if I ever managed to stand again, I would have to rebuild everything quickly. That I would need purpose, direction, meaning, something big enough to justify why I was still here. But life didn't return like that. It returned, quietly. In pieces. Summer came again. Warm air. Longer days. The kind of light that stays a little longer in the evening, as if the day itself doesn't want to end. I noticed it more this time. Before, seasons passed without meaning. Just markers of time I didn't care about. Now, I felt them. One evening, I stayed in the park longer than usual. People were leaving, slowly. Parents calling their children. Dogs pulling toward home. Voices fading into distance. But I remained on the bench. Luca sat close, his body pressed against my leg, calm, steady. The sky was turning orange, then soft blue, then something darker in between. And I realized something strange. For the first time in years, I didn't want the day to end. That feeling stayed with me. It wasn't overwhelming. But it was real. A few days later, something unexpected happened. A woman approached me, not with the casual curiosity I had gotten used to, but with intention. She had seen me before. I recognized her faintly. Always passing, always observing. This might sound strange, she said, but you look like someone people could talk to. I didn't answer immediately. Because I didn't see myself that way. I still saw the man who had lost everything. She continued. I volunteer at a small support group. People who have lost family. Not therapy, just a place to sit, to speak if they want. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear. Something deeper. Resistance. Because I knew, if I went there, I wouldn't just be listening. I would have to face my own story, out loud. I don't know if I'm ready for that, I said honestly. She nodded. You don't have to be ready. You just have to show up once. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words kept returning. You just have to show up once. For years, I had avoided places like that. Not because I didn't understand grief, but because I understood it too well. And I didn't want to sit in a room where every story echoed mine. But something had changed. Not completely. But enough. Enough to consider it. A week later, I went. The room was small. Simple. Chairs in a circle. No stage. No structure. Just people. Different ages. Different faces. but all carrying something invisible. No one forced me to speak. I sat down. Luca stayed at my feet. People talked. One by one. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just honest. A woman who lost her husband. A man who lost his sister. A mother who lost her child. Each story, different. But the same in one way. Something irreplaceable was gone. At first, I listened. Quiet. Observing. Feeling that familiar weight, but also something else. Connection. Not through happiness, but through understanding. Then, without planning to, I spoke. My name is Daniel, I said. My voice felt unfamiliar. Not weak. Just exposed. I lost my oldest son 13 years ago. The room went still. Not uncomfortable. Just attentive. My wife, 10 years ago. Cancer. I paused. Breath steady, but heavy. My younger son, 5 years ago. Silence. But not empty silence. A kind of silence that holds you instead of pushing you away. I thought that was it, I continued. I thought, when the last one was gone, there was nothing left for me to be here for. My hands moved slightly. I didn't even realize. I stopped living. I didn't call it that. I just existed. I looked down at Luca. He changed that. A few people followed my gaze. I continued. I found him, broken. Almost gone. My voice softened. And for the first time in years, something needed me again. I didn't say everything. Not the details. Not the images. Just the truth. When I finished, no one clapped. No one rushed to speak. They just nodded. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Seen. After the meeting, a man approached me. You said something important, he told me. I looked at him. What? That you thought there was nothing left, and then something small changed that. He paused. That matters. On the way home, I was quiet. But not empty. Something had shifted again. Not dramatically, but clearly. I realized that my story, as painful as it is, doesn't only belong to me. It can reach someone else. Not to fix them. Not to solve anything. But to show them they are not the only ones carrying something this heavy. And maybe that's part of why I'm still here. Not to replace what I lost. That's impossible. But to carry it in a way that still has meaning. Weeks passed. I returned to the group. Not every time. But enough. Sometimes I spoke. Sometimes I didn't. But I was there. And something else began to happen. People started staying after. Talking. Not about loss. About life. Simple things. Food. Weather. Dogs. Memories that didn't hurt as much. One evening, as I walked home with Luca, I realized something quietly powerful. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was participating. It's a small difference. But it changes everything. I still have days where the past feels too close. Still moments where grief rises without warning. Still nights where silence becomes heavy again. But now, there is also movement. Forward, and sometimes back, but never completely lost. And when I sit by the window at night, with Luca resting beside me, I don't just think about what I lost. I also think about what remained. What returned. What found me when I wasn't even looking. A broken man. A broken dog. Two lives that crossed the lowest point. And somehow, between silence and breath and time. Something fragile began to grow again. Not the life I had, but a life I can still live. And now, when I ask myself, quietly, what now? The answer comes, without fear. Now, I stay. I care. I speak, when I can. I listen, when it matters. I walk, every morning. I remember, without disappearing. And I keep going. Not because I forgot, but because I didn't. And somehow, that makes all the difference. There are things no one tells you about continuing after loss. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind people put into words. The quiet things. Like how one day, without realizing, you laugh. Not a forced smile. Not something polite. A real laugh. Short. Almost surprising. And for a second, you freeze. Because it feels unfamiliar. And then comes the thought. Am I allowed to feel this? I remember the first time it happened. It was nothing important. Luca had chased a leaf for almost 10 minutes, convinced it was something alive, something worth catching. He slipped, rolled, got up, and looked at me like he meant to do that. And I laughed. Just like that. No warning. No control. And then, silence. The laugh faded, but the feeling stayed. Not guilt. Something else. A strange mix of relief and fear. Because joy, even small joy, felt like stepping into a space I had abandoned long ago. That night, I sat with that feeling. I didn't push it away. I didn't question it too much. I just let it exist. And slowly, I understood something important. Feeling something again doesn't erase what I lost. It doesn't betray it. It proves I'm still capable of being human. Another thing no one tells you. There will be days when you feel almost normal. And then something small breaks it. A song. A smell. A sentence someone says without thinking. One afternoon, I walked past a small store. Music was playing inside. I didn't even recognize the song at first. But then, something in the melody pulled me in. I stopped. And suddenly, I was back in the kitchen. Elena moving around, cooking. That same melody playing softly in the background. Mihai sitting at the table, quiet as always. Andrei arguing about something meaningless. Life, as it was. Alive. Oh. I stood there for a long time. Not moving. Not thinking. Just feeling. Then it passed. Not completely. But enough for me to take a step forward again. This is what I've learned. Healing doesn't move in a straight line. It circles. Returns. Repeats. But each time, it hurts a little differently. A little less sharp. A little more understood. The support group became part of my routine. Not something I depended on, but something that grounded me. There was a young woman who never spoke during the first few meetings. She would sit quietly, hands together, eyes lowered. I recognized that silence. I had lived in it. One evening, after most people had left, she stayed behind. So did I. She looked at Luca for a long time before speaking. He trusts you, she said. I nodded. Yes. She hesitated. Do you think people can learn to trust life again? That question. It stayed in the air longer than anything else that night. I didn't answer immediately. Because I didn't want to give her something empty. Or something easy. I don't think it's about trusting life, I said slowly. She looked at me. I think it's about allowing yourself to live anyway. She frowned slightly. As if trying to understand. I lost trust a long time ago, I continued. In fairness. In control. In the idea that things happen for a reason. I paused. But I'm still here. I looked at Luca. And I didn't come back because life became safe. I met her eyes again. I came back because something needed me, and I stayed. She didn't reply. But her expression changed. Not fully. But enough. Sometimes, we don't need answers. We just need to see that survival is possible. That night, walking home, I thought about something I hadn't considered before. Maybe strength isn't loud. Maybe it's not about fighting. Maybe it's about staying. Even when everything in you wants to disappear. The days continued. Simple. Structured. Real. I started fixing small things around the house. A broken handle. A light that hadn't worked in years. Things I had ignored. Not because they mattered. But because I didn't. Now. I did. At least enough to try. One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of a mirror longer than usual. Not checking anything. Just looking. Really looking. The man staring back at me was not the man I used to be. There were more lines. More weight in the eyes. More history than anyone could see at a glance. But there was also something else. Something that hadn't been there for a long time. Presence. I didn't look away. I didn't avoid it. I just nodded, slightly. As if acknowledging something I had denied for years. I'm still here. And for the first time, that sentence didn't feel empty. Later that evening, sitting by the window, I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't afraid of tomorrow anymore. Not because I expected something good, but because I no longer expected nothing. There was space again. Small. Fragile. But real. Luca shifted beside me, resting his head against my arm. His breathing steady. Calm. Alive. I placed my hand on his head. And for a moment, everything was quiet. Not empty. Not heavy. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I understood something that had taken me years to reach. Life doesn't ask you to forget. It doesn't ask you to move on. It asks you to continue. Not as who you were, but as who you are now. And maybe that's the hardest part. But also, the only way forward. There comes a moment, no one can tell you exactly when the past stops feeling like something you're trapped inside, and becomes something you carry. Not lighter, but steadier. It happened to me on an ordinary day. Nothing special. No anniversary. No memory date. No reason for it to be different. Just a normal afternoon. I was in the park again. Same bench. Same path. Same quiet rhythm of people passing by. Luca lay beside me, half asleep, completely at peace with the world. And I was watching the trees. The way the branches moved in the wind, slow, flexible, never resisting fully. They didn't break. They adapted. I don't know why, but that's when it came to me. For years, I had been trying to stand still. To hold everything exactly as it was. To keep memories frozen, untouched. Because I believed that if I let them move, I would lose them completely. But I was wrong. Holding on too tightly was what was breaking me. That realization didn't come with emotion. No tears. No shock. Just clarity. Quiet, undeniable clarity. I looked at Luca. He opened one eye, just briefly, then closed it again. Trusting the moment completely. Not questioning the past. Not fearing the future. Just existing. And I thought, What if I allow life to move the way those branches do? Not resisting every change. Not fighting every memory. Not trying to control what can't be controlled. Just moving with it. That evening, I did something I had avoided for years. I went to the cemetery. I had visited before. Of course I had. But those visits were different. Heavy. Silent. Almost unbearable. I would stand there, feel everything at once, then leave as quickly as possible. This time, I stayed. 3 names. 3 stones. 3 lives that defined mine. I stood there for a long time. Not speaking at first. Just being there. The wind moved softly. The air was calm. No noise. No rush. I've been trying to hold everything the same, I said finally. My voice was steady. Not broken. Not distant. Just honest. I thought if I let anything change, I would lose you again. I looked at the names, one by one. But I understand now. I paused, took a breath. You're not in the past. The words felt strange, but true. You're in me. Silence. But not empty silence. I didn't leave, I continued. I stayed. Even when I didn't want to. A faint smile, almost invisible. And I'm still here. I didn't ask for anything. No signs. No answers. I just stood there and allowed the moment to exist, without trying to control it. When I turned to leave, I didn't feel like I was abandoning them. I felt like I was taking them with me. That's the difference. On the way home, something shifted again. Not dramatically, but deeply. I realized I had spent years thinking my life ended in pieces. First Andrei, then Elena, then Mihai. But that's not what happened. My life didn't end. It changed each time. It broke each time. But it didn't end. Because I didn't end. That's understanding. It's not easy. It doesn't remove pain. But it gives it structure. When I got home, Luca greeted me at the door like always. Tail moving. Eyes bright. Present. I knelt down, placing my hand on his head. You stayed too, I said quietly. Because in his own way, he had. Through everything. Without questions. Without expectations. That night, something new happened. I didn't think about what I lost. Not because I forgot. But because I didn't need to hold it so tightly anymore. I thought about something else. What I can still give. Not in a big way. Not in a way that changes the world. But in small ways. Real ways. A conversation. A moment of presence. A simple act of care. Because now I understand something I didn't before. Life doesn't rebuild itself all at once. It grows in small, almost invisible steps. And if you pay attention, those steps lead somewhere. The next day, at the support group, I didn't wait to be asked. I spoke first. Grief doesn't leave, I said. The room grew quiet. But it changes shape. I looked around. Different faces. Different stories. Same weight. At first, it takes everything. I paused. Then slowly, it gives something back. Someone asked, "What does it give?" I thought for a moment. Not searching for the perfect answer. Just the honest one. Depth, I said. Clarity. A breath. And the ability to recognize what actually matters. Silence again. But this time, it felt different. Not heavy. Grounded. Because sometimes, truth doesn't need explanation. That evening, walking home, I realized something simple, but powerful. I'm not the man I was. I never will be again. But I'm also not the man I became at my lowest point. I am something in between. Something rebuilt, not from forgetting, but from surviving. And maybe that's enough. Now, when I sit by the window, with the lights low, and Luca resting beside me, I don't ask, why me? I don't ask, what's the point? I ask something else. Something quieter. Something real. How can I live this day, honestly? And the answer is never complicated. Stay. Care. Notice. Breathe. Continue. That's all. And somehow, after everything, it's enough. There is a quiet kind of courage that doesn't look like anything from the outside. No one applauds it. No one notices when it happens. But it's there, in the smallest decisions. Like getting up on a day when you don't want to. Like answering a message instead of ignoring it. Like stepping outside when staying inside feels safer. Like choosing, again, to remain. I began to understand this not in one moment, but over time. Because life didn't suddenly become meaningful. It became manageable. And that was enough to keep going. One afternoon, while sitting on the bench, I noticed something I hadn't paid attention to before. There was a young boy trying to teach his dog how to sit. The dog didn't listen. Ran away. Came back. Jumped. Ignored every command. The boy became frustrated. His father stood nearby, watching calmly. Why doesn't he listen? The boy asked. The father smiled slightly. Because you're trying to control him, he said. Not understand him. That sentence stayed with me. Not because of the dog, but because of what it meant. For years, I tried to control my pain. To silence it. To shape it. To make it behave in a way that made sense. But pain doesn't work like that. Grief doesn't listen. You don't control it. You learn to live beside it. That realization didn't weaken me. It softened something inside me. I stopped trying to fix myself. Stopped expecting a version of me that existed before everything happened. Instead, I began to accept the man I had become. Not perfect. Not whole. But real. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And slowly, something unexpected began to grow. Not happiness. Something quieter. Peace. Not all the time. Not every day. But enough to notice. Peace in routine. Peace in small moments. Peace in knowing that I don't have to fight every thought that comes into my mind. One evening, while walking home, I passed by a small bookstore. I hadn't been inside a place like that in years. Books used to be part of my life. Before everything became heavy. I stopped. Looked through the window. Rows of stories. Lives on pages. Worlds I had forgotten existed. Without thinking too much, I went inside. The smell of paper. Quiet music. Soft light. It felt distant. Familiar. Strange. I didn't know what I was looking for. So I walked slowly between the shelves, touching the spines of books without reading the titles. Then I stopped at one. I don't remember the name now. But I remember what I felt. Curiosity. That alone was new. I bought it. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted to see if I could still feel something for a story that wasn't mine. That night, I sat by the window. Luca beside me. The book in my hands. At first, it was difficult. My mind would drift. Memories would interrupt. Thoughts would pull me away. But I stayed. Page by page. Slowly. Without pressure. And then, something happened. I got lost in it. Just for a few minutes. But enough. Enough to remind me that my mind could still travel, beyond my own pain. I closed the book gently. Not finished. But not abandoned. That became part of my evenings. Reading. Not as an escape. But as a way to expand the space inside me. Because that's what I realized. Pain had made my world very small. Focused. Narrow. But life, even after loss, is still wide. If you allow it. One day, at the support group, the young woman who had asked me about trust spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet, but steady. I thought I would never feel anything again, she said. The room was still. I thought everything ended when I lost him. She paused. But yesterday, I laughed. A small smile. Barely visible. And it scared me. I understood that feeling completely. She looked at me. Not asking for an answer. Just sharing. I nodded. You don't lose them by living, I said. My voice calm. You honor them by not disappearing. Her eyes filled with something. Not just sadness. Something else. Recognition. That moment. It stayed with me. Because I realized something important. The words I once needed. I could now give. Not because I had all the answers. But because I had walked through the same darkness. And sometimes, that's enough. That night, walking home, I felt something steady inside me. Not fragile. Not temporary. Something rooted. I stopped in front of my house. Looked up at the sky. Clear. Quiet. Endless. Years ago, I would have looked at that same sky and felt nothing. Or worse, emptiness. Now, I felt small. But not in a bad way. In a way that reminded me. Life is bigger than my pain. Even if my pain is deep. I opened the door. Luca walked in ahead of me, as always. At home. Without question. And I followed. Not out of habit. But because I belonged there. Later, sitting in the same chair, same place, same silence. I realized something that took me years to understand. I didn't come back to life all at once. I returned. In moments. In a laugh. In a conversation. In a walk. In a memory that didn't destroy me. In a book I chose to open. Piece by piece. Day by day. And now, when I sit in the quiet, I don't feel like I'm waiting for something to end. I feel like I'm living something that continues. And maybe, after everything, that's the strongest thing a person can do. Not forget. Not erase. Not escape. But stay. And slowly learn how to live again. There is a point you don't notice right away, when life stops feeling like something you're rebuilding, and starts feeling like something you're simply living. No announcement. No clear line. Just a quiet shift. It happened one morning. Nothing special. No different from the others. I woke up. Sat on the edge of the bed. Looked around the room. Same walls. Same light. Same silence. But something inside me wasn't heavy. Not empty. Just steady. I stood up, opened the curtains. Light filled the room the way it always does. But this time, I didn't think about what used to be. I didn't compare. I didn't measure. I just watched. Luca came to me, tail moving, eyes alert. Ready. Present. Always present. All right, I said. And for the first time in a long time, the words carried something simple. Willingness. Outside, the air felt different. Or maybe I did. People passed by. Cars moved. Life continued the way it always does. But I was no longer standing outside of it, watching from a distance. I was inside it again. At the park, I didn't go straight to the bench. I walked. Not in circles. Forward. Without thinking about where I would stop. There's something about walking without purpose. It reminds you that movement itself matters. Luca ran ahead, then came back, then ahead again. Same rhythm. Same energy. But now, I understood it differently. He wasn't trying to get somewhere. He was just moving because he could. And maybe that's something we forget as we grow older. We think everything has to lead somewhere. Have meaning. Direction. Outcome. But sometimes, movement itself is enough. That day, I walked farther than usual. Past the familiar paths. Past the places I knew. Into parts of the park I had never explored. Nothing extraordinary. Just new. And that was enough to make me stop. To look around. To notice. A small bridge over a narrow stream. Water moving quietly beneath it. Not strong like the river. Not dangerous. Just flowing. I stood there for a while, watching it, and I realized something that felt almost like an answer. Not all water takes. Some water carries. I stayed there longer than I planned. No rush. No reason to leave. Eventually, I turned back. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. That difference. It matters more than people think. Later that day, something unexpected happened. I received a call. I looked at the phone for a long time before answering. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Old habits don't disappear completely. But I answered. Hello? A pause. Then a familiar voice. Daniel. I froze. Because I hadn't heard that voice in years. It was my sister. We hadn't spoken since Elena's funeral. Not because of anger. Not because of conflict. But because I had closed myself off completely. And she didn't know how to reach me anymore. I didn't know if you would answer, she said. Her voice, cautious. Careful. I almost didn't, I replied honestly. A small silence. Not uncomfortable. Just real. I've been thinking about you, she continued. I heard from someone that you've been going out more. I looked at Luca. At the room. At the life I had slowly allowed back in. Yeah, I said. I've been trying. Another pause. But this time, something softer. I'd like to see you, she said. When you're ready. For years, I would have said no. Without hesitation. Without thought. But now? I didn't. I'm not sure when, I said. But I don't think I want to stay alone anymore. Her breath shifted on the other end. Relief. That's enough, she said. We'll take it step by step. We ended the call simply. No promises. No plans. But something had changed. I sat down. Looked at my hands. Steady. For the first time in years. I didn't feel like I had to protect myself from everything. Because I wasn't as fragile as I thought. That evening, I took out the box again. The one with the photographs. The memories. But this time, it felt different. I didn't open it to suffer. I opened it to remember. I took out the photo. All four of us. I looked at it, and instead of asking, "Why is this gone?" I thought something else. I was lucky to have this. That thought. It doesn't remove the pain, but it changes the weight of it. Luca rested his head on my leg, as if reminding me where I was. Now. Not then. I placed the photo back carefully. Closed the box. Not hiding it. Not escaping it. Just placing it where it belongs. Part of my life. Not all of it. Later, sitting by the window, watching the night settle slowly, I realized something that once felt impossible. I don't feel lost anymore. I feel changed. And there's a difference. Loss means you don't know where you are. Change means you know you're not who you used to be. And now, that doesn't scare me, because I understand something clearly. I didn't survive everything just to remain broken. I survived to become something else. Something quieter. Stronger in a different way. More aware. More present. And now, when I ask myself, what now? The answer is no longer uncertain. Now, I keep going. I reconnect. I allow people back in, slowly. I carry my past, without letting it stop me. I live, without rushing. And tomorrow, when I wake up, I won't be starting over. I'll be continuing. And that, after everything, is more than I ever thought possible. Continuing doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means you begin to trust that you can handle what comes, even if you don't control it. A few days after the call, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. Not because I was searching for something, but because I knew I was about to step into something I had avoided for years. Seeing my sister. I tried to remember the last time we spoke without distance between us. I couldn't. Too much had happened since then. Too many things left unsaid. Luca sat by the door, watching me. Waiting. He didn't know where we were going. But he was ready. "All right," I said quietly. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to nervousness. Not fear. Something human. The drive felt longer than it was. Familiar streets. Places I used to pass without thinking. Now carrying weight. When I arrived, I didn't get out of the car immediately. I sat there. Hands on the steering wheel. Breathing slowly. There's a moment, before something important, where time feels stretched. Where everything becomes still. Then I opened the door. She was already outside. Waiting. Time had changed her. Of course it had. More lines. Softer expression. Eyes that had seen things she never expected. But it was her. Still her. For a second, we just looked at each other. No words. No movement. And then she stepped forward. And hugged me. I didn't move at first. My body, unsure. Unfamiliar with this kind of closeness after so many years. But then, slowly, I placed my arms around her. And something inside me shifted again. Not broken. Not painful. Just released. We didn't say much at the beginning. We didn't need to. Some connections don't require explanation. Inside, everything felt both familiar and distant. Photos on the wall. Voices in the other room. Life continuing. She made tea. Simple. Quiet. We sat at the table. "I didn't know how to reach you," she said finally. Her voice soft. Careful. "I didn't know how to be reached," I replied. No defense. No excuse. Just truth. She nodded. Tears, but controlled. I thought I lost you too, she said. That sentence landed deeper than anything else. Because I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to see. While I was grieving what I lost, others were grieving me. I looked down at my hands, then back at her. I'm here now, I said. Simple. But it meant everything. We talked. Slowly. Not about everything. Not all at once. But enough. She asked about Luca. Smiled when he came closer. He saved you, didn't he? She said gently. I shook my head slightly. We saved each other. She understood. You could see it. Not fully, but enough. Hours passed without feeling heavy. Conversation moved naturally. Sometimes silence. But not the kind that separates. The kind that rests. Before leaving, she walked me to the door. Don't disappear again, she said. I looked at her. Not as the man who used to hide, but as the man who had learned what staying means. I won't, I said. And for the first time, I believed it. The drive back felt different. Lighter. Not because anything was fixed, but because something had reopened. Connection. When I got home, Luca ran ahead as always. Familiar. Grounding. I sat down and didn't feel the usual emptiness. I felt full. Not completely, but enough. That night, I didn't sit in silence. I called someone from the support group. Just to check in. Just to talk. A simple action. But something I would never have done before. Because now, I understood something clearly. Isolation protects you from pain. But it also keeps you from life. And I had spent enough years not living. Days continued. Routine remained. But now, there were more people inside it. A message. A call. A visit planned. Small things. But meaningful. One morning, while walking, I noticed something unexpected. I was thinking about the future. Not in fear. Not in uncertainty. But in possibility. That surprised me. Because for so long, the future felt like something that didn't belong to me anymore. Now, it did. Even if I didn't know what it looked like. And that's when I understood something that took me years to reach. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to believe there is one. And for the first time in a long time, I did. That evening, sitting by the window, Luca resting beside me. I didn't replay the past. I didn't question the present. I just existed in the moment. And in that moment, there was no weight pulling me down. Just quiet. Just breath. Just life, as it is now. And maybe that's what healing truly is. Not becoming who you were, but learning how to live as who you are now, without losing yourself again. And this time, I won't. There is something I understand now that I didn't before. Life doesn't return what it takes. It doesn't fix what it breaks. And it doesn't explain why things happen the way they do. But it does something else. Something quieter. It leaves space. Space for something new to exist. Not instead of what was lost, but alongside it. I used to think that loving again meant replacing what I had. That living again meant forgetting. But I was wrong. Nothing replaces them. Nothing ever will. And yet, my life didn't end with them. It changed. It broke. It fell apart. And somehow, it found a way to continue. Not because I was strong. Not because I had answers. But because I stayed. That's all I did. I stayed. when everything in me wanted to leave. I stayed when silence felt heavier than pain. I stayed when there was nothing left to hold on to. And in that staying, something unexpected happened. Life found me again. Not all at once, not loudly, but in small things. In a walk, in a conversation, in a quiet evening, in a dog who refused to let me disappear. And now, when I sit by the window at night, with Luca beside me, I don't ask for my old life back. I don't ask for answers. I don't ask for anything at all. I just sit there and breathe. And for the first time in many years, that breath feels enough. If someone had told me years ago that I would feel this again, I wouldn't have believed them. But here I am, still carrying everything I lost, and still alive. Not the same man, but a man who stayed. And maybe, in the end, that is the quietest form of strength there is.